Hello. Chainsaw Man chapter 166 came out today, and today is a very good day because Kobeni not being a sex worker, excellent, amazing. Ah, man, I had many prayers this week for this to not happen, and it didn't happen. So, just by that alone, it's a very good chapter. Uh, every day I pray for Kobeni's safety and well-being. But moving on from Kobeni, because she is thankfully not in this chapter, we move on to continue the continuation of the end of last chapter, which is Asa responding to Katana Man's suggestion of going to the brothel. And the title of this chapter is called Rain, Brothel, and Removal because there is rain, there is a brothel, and there is a potential removal at the end of the chapter. But anyways, Asa tells Katana Man he's being dumb and that Denji would never think of doing such things. But Denji is thinking of doing such things, and ooh, we see Denji use every one of his last brain cells to come up with an excuse to follow Samurai Man's suggestion of going to the brothel, and the answer he comes to is science. So he tries to justify going to the brothel by bringing up that he hasn't touched himself in a while. So it's a physical need for men, according to Denji. He tries to get some affirmation from the other boys, but he gets nothing. And Asa is predictably very disgusted. She brings up that, the importance of saving Nayuta before anything else. But Denji, being the academic he is, goes back to science. So the gang goes to Katana Man's brothel, but turns out it's burnt down. So Katana Man himself is pretty surprised, and it kind of makes sense because he's been held captive for quite some time. So what happens to his businesses and his whatever else he wouldn't know about. And the name of the establishment is Condom Girl, which implies that they use proper protection and practice good hygiene, which is good. So shout out to them. And Asa is still very disgusted, but she lets out a short ha in, I guess, to spite the other boys in the group. Spite Katana Man and spite Denji. Denji, on the other hand, collapses to his knees, and it starts raining like a theater tragedy. And the rain kind of, I guess, Denji has a bit of a post-nut clarity here, and the rain maybe represents that a little bit, because Denji comes to his senses, and he reflects on himself. He understands the absurdity of him trying to get laid while his pets are dead and Nayuta is missing. So Denji then moves on and he reveals again that he wants to be Chainsaw Man to get laid and to get a bunch of girls. And it's a bit of a callback to chapter 93, I want to say. And instead of Kishibe and Kobeni being disgusted, we have Haruka probably questioning his choices, and Nobana laughing at Denji, but not because it's funny, but he's laughing because of how pathetic Denji is. And you know it's pretty much over when zero confidence Nobana is laughing at you. But Denji continues to not take any responsibility, and he blames his pee for his woes. But then at the end of the chapter, Yoru takes over Asa's body and comes to a pretty straightforward proposal, a pretty straightforward answer to Denji's problems, which is she's gonna cut off his dick. So that concludes the chapter. Overall, pretty short chapter, but at the same time, actually, no, there's not actually that many, there's not that much substance to it either, to be honest. I think maybe we can go over like Denji's actual motivation. He's claiming that he only wants to be Chainsaw Man for the ladies, for to be popular with girls. But I don't necessarily think that's entirely true. But that's um I'm not really prepared to go over that right now because I don't have the stuff put up. But I think that's something we'll elaborate on in the future. But anyways, so I think the more bigger thing we can talk about is whether Denji's gonna get his dick chopped off. Ooh, sorry, my throat's not been kind to me lately. But so Denji blames his what do you call it? His desires, his lack of responsibility on his dick, and he's pretty hard on himself in terms of, you know, following Samurai Man's plan with the brothel. But I think it's in some ways it's more of a coping mechanism. He's had a stressful time lately, and it makes, I guess it makes sense for him to want some distraction from his grief because his pets are dead. Nayuta, for all he knows, might be dead. So, I don't know how many of you watched Game of Thrones or read A Song of Ice and Fire, but there was a character in there that ended up uh how do you say it? He had sex with someone he wasn't supposed to because he was under a lot of stress and grief. I was trying to think of how I should go about talking about that without spoiling, but that's like a connection that I made in my head. But another thing is ultimately we have this cliffhanger on whether Denji's going to lose his PP or not. And personally I think he would. He is going to lose his PP because in the past, in the beginning of this story, he sold one of his nuts for apparently 100,000 yen. So about like I guess $800 in American freedom units. And at the same time, Denji is in very, very despair. He's despairing. He's not exactly right in the mental side of things. So I think he would actually go along with it because right now he genuinely thinks that everything is his dick's fault because of his lack of impulse control. So I think he let Asa and Yoru cut his dick off next chapter, as difficult as that might be to believe. And I think there is an actual theme lesson to this side plot, or maybe it's not a side plot, but this plot point, I would say. And I think that goes back to the fact that Denji needs to take responsibility for his own actions, right? Because this whole chapter, he's blaming all his mistakes on his dick instead of just reflecting on himself. So where I think we're going with this is that he's gonna get his dick chopped off, but then he is still going to have the same problems in that he doesn't necessarily change his behavior at first. So I think that's when he's going to realize that the direction he's going isn't good, and that he's going to have to make some changes to himself. And that's when he will get his dick back. That's kind of where I see this is going. And in a, I guess, thematic, metaphorical way, it's like he is literally reclaiming his manhood while stepping up to be a man and taking responsibility for his own actions. That's kind of where I think we're going to go. But yeah, I know as much as the rest of you on this, so I wouldn't be too surprised if he keeps his PP next chapter. But yeah, that's the end of this chapter. Relatively short, and we're gonna have a week off next week, so we'll come back in 2 weeks. Let's see. Do I think Denji is impulsive? He is very impulsive. I think. Let me think of recent examples of his impulsivity. I guess the most glaring one was that it's the when he met Fumiko, he had like a whole like he know what she's up to. He knew that she was probably, not she was probably just playing with him. She's a suspicious figure. He had like a whole mental bubble on like what he wanted to say to her. But then she ended up doing what she told him to do anyways. So I think he's very impulsive. Let me see. What else are you saying? You don't think he do that? I assume that referring to cutting off his dick. Yeah. I don't know if I don't know how that. Like artistically, I don't know how Fujimoto's gonna show that, but I don't know. If I have money, I would put like $3 on him cutting off his dick, or she cutting off his dick, because Yoru's gonna be the one doing it. But yeah, that's all from me. I'll see y'all